Don't you just hate it when your stack of wood just falls over all by itself? I sure do. I'm going to show you how I stack wood in a way that keeps it from tipping over. And I'll show you how to stack it in a way that will make it look much nicer. It'll look so nice when people see it, they'll say, "That's a really nice looking stack of firewood you have there." To do that, we're going to have to travel back in time to before this stack was even stacked. Here we are back in time. Pretty trippy, huh? I typically want to start by putting something on the ground to stack the wood on. 2x4s can work nicely, or whatever you happen to have available that will accomplish the same thing, as long as they are both level with each other. You might think using something round like these could be a problem because they might roll. If you have a nearly perfect hard flat surface, if these were perfectly round, maybe. But with something like this, there's enough variable inconsistencies in it. I've never had a problem with that. Variable inconsistencies. That's some real fancy talk right there. I like to stack it on two somewhat narrow pieces like this, or 2x4 or whatever. I do this for two main reasons. One, to keep it off the ground. If the wood is touching the ground, it can absorb moisture out of the ground, and if it's sitting there over a season, the dirt will stick to it. It'll be a big mess. If you stack it right on the ground, you'll probably wish you didn't. If the wood's on the ground, it could encourage more bugs, maybe termites, fungus. If it's up off the ground, it just makes for a much nicer to deal with product. It's just more better that way. I space these apart the same length of the wood. The reason is it gives it two support points right at the end. That creates a more stable stack. If you were to stack the wood on a flat surface like a concrete slab, you can get a teeter-totter effect when it's being supported in the middle. If all the wood and the surface were perfectly uniform, we wouldn't have that situation. But we have variable inconsistencies to have to deal with. But if we're only supporting the wood by both of the ends, but the middle is unsupported, we don't have that teetering situation. No teetering, no tottering, just stabling. Now, of course, we start stacking the wood. Try the best you can to make the wood perpendicular to the things, instead of just lackadaisically setting them on there. If you have a big gap over here and a small gap over here, or no gap, when you put the next piece on, now you have a piece that's tilted, and now you don't have a flat place to start the next row on. If you do that here too, now you have one going this way, one going that way. What are the poor next pieces supposed to do with that? Now everything's all wonky. But if you can just be a little bit more mindful to create a more uniform stack, that can create a more stable stack. We're mostly stable here now. We don't have any teetering. Then we just continue stacking them, trying to keep them perpendicular to these things, reasonably parallel to each other. Here we have a highly inconsistent piece. If you put it down this way, it's going to have a rock to it. So just arrange it until it doesn't rock anymore. Same with this one. If I put it like this, it's going to rock. A lot of times all you need is to just move it a little bit to make it stable. That's where you leave it. Both of these wonky pieces creates an uneven place to stack on here. Well, here I have a piece of wood with a bulge over here. Sometimes that bulge will fit into one of those inconsistent places. That's nice and stable. Keep going with the same thing. Try to keep them perpendicular to the things. Here we have a bump right here. But look here, we have a gap right here. That thing can go right down in the gap. No problem. We have a valley here, a narrow edge to fit down into that valley. This one has a narrow corner that'll fit into this spot. This spot is just right to fit that one into. Instead of just mindlessly plopping the pieces down, hoping for the best, by being a little more mindful about how they're fitting together, you can make a more stable stack. Here we have a teetering situation. A lot of times all you have to do is move it a little bit, like that. Now it's stable. Just taking that fraction of a second to move that piece just a little bit to where it's stable can be the difference between a stack that stays up and a stack that tips over. If you don't have anything to stack your wood on, like 2x4s or poles, well then go get some. That'll solve the problem. Nah, sometimes what I will do is I'll use some sacrificial pieces. I pick out some of the smaller pieces that are about the same size so they stay level, and off we go. I've never had a problem with using round pieces. If there's a lot of weight on something that's not perfectly round, it's hard to get it to roll. They can roll if there's not a lot of weight on it, but once you get a lot of weight on it, it has to lift that weight in order to roll. When I'm using pieces of firewood like this to stack on, when I'm ready to put a couple of them down, I don't at that time go around looking for the perfect uniform pieces. While I'm stacking, I'll just be mindful that I know I'm going to need them. When I run into pieces that are the size I want to use, I'll throw them aside. I'll end up with a little collection down at the end where I need them. Then when it's time to extend the base, they are right there, ready to go. Some people might be thinking this is a lot of work, trying to keep things even and stack together uniformly, make sure the pieces fit together. It might be at first. In the beginning, it might seem like it's hard to get everything to fit together right. But just like anything, when you try something new, it's not going to be easy right in the beginning, but all it takes is a little bit of practice, and a lot of these things come naturally without even thinking much about it. Just mindlessly stacking wood can be a lot of just labor, mindless labor. I think trying to interlock the pieces, getting them to fit together nicely, it adds another layer of interest to what I'm doing. It gives it an element of strategy and makes it more interesting. And you might prevent a catastrophic stack failure event, which is just an extra fancy way of saying my stack of wood tipped over. Here I have a piece that's really ununiform. There's a groove here to put this thin part in. If I put it in like this side is considerably higher than this side. But if I turn it around, it fits in the groove better. Now from point to point, it's more level for the next piece. When you have these uneven pieces, a lot of times you'll end up with a spot like this where it's narrow over here, but wide over here. You put in a piece that's narrower over here and wider over here. Fits in there nicely. Now we have two parallel edges here. Perfect for the next piece. Again, it might seem like it's a lot of extra work to do this, but after you do it for a little while, it just comes natural. Or it does for me anyway, but I might just be weird. If you look along the edge of the stack, you might notice it's pretty straight. The ends of the pieces are all coming out fairly flush. If I'm stacking wood where I or somebody's going to have to be looking at it, whichever side of the stack people are going to be looking at, that's the side I try to make come out uniform. One of the ways I do that is I put my hand against the even side and just push the wood up to it so it's even along here. That makes the stack look nicer. It keeps it straighter so it's not going all over the place, and it helps to keep the stack going straight up and down, which makes it more stable. Inevitably, somebody's probably going to say something like, "It's just a stack of firewood. You're going to burn it anyway. Who cares what it looks like?" Don't we all just love a curmudgeon? They are the ones who have it all. They get invited to all the good parties. They have all the fun. Oh, to be a curmudgeon. That stacked up nicely. There were a few mildly wonky pieces in there, but most of these were reasonable, easy to stack pieces. But what do you do when you have odd-shaped pieces that just don't stack well? Crooked pieces, weird pieces, short ones, your Charlie Brown pieces. What do I do with those? Don't tell anybody this, but I cheat. I just don't stack them. I stack all the good, easy to stack ones, throw all the goofy ones in a pile, burn those first. If I burn those first, it gets rid of them, they go away, no more problem. Then I'm left with all the good pieces. Which brings up the next question, why are you stacking your firewood to begin with? Are you stacking it because you have a good reason to stack it, or are you stacking it because you just think that's what you have to do with firewood? You don't have to stack firewood. Firewood can be left in a pile. There are some good reasons to stack it, and there can be some good reasons to just leave it in a pile. It all depends on the things it depends on. Maybe that's a good subject for another video. This is dry, well-seasoned wood. This stack should be good just the way it is, but things can get a little bit more complicated if you're stacking green or really wet wood, because wood will shrink as it dries, which is typically not a problem if all the wood dries at the same rate. There are common situations where one side of the stack will dry faster than the other side. For example, if this was the sunny side, this side would get more sun. Well, obviously, it would dry faster. It would shrink faster than this side, and the stack will start to lean toward the sun. My great-grandma had another idea of why that happened. She always thought the sun somehow pulled on the wood. I don't know if she ran that by the scientific community or not, but that's what she believed. Or if the stack is up against a building or another stack of wood, you're going to have less airflow on this side, more airflow on this side. This side will probably dry faster. It'll start leaning that way. One way to combat that is to know which side is going to get more sun, which side is likely to have more airflow. If you know which side is probably going to lean, instead of stacking it straight up, you can stack it leaning a little bit opposite of the direction it's going to want to move to compensate for that. But sometimes it can start to lean and might even tip over. A lot of times when that happens, I will use the battering ram technique. Just push it back up. That is typical of green or wet wood. If you stack it when it's dry, there's a much better chance it's going to stay right where you put it. If you don't want your stack to have these sloped ends, you'd rather have vertical ends like this one. I made a video about a year ago showing how to make these very sturdy end things that make it vertical. I'll put a link to that video up here somewhere at the end of this one. I'm also planning on doing a video soon showing how to make vertical ends without using any of this kind of paraphernalia, only using firewood, and I'll show you how to do it in a way that makes it much less likely for it to fall over. If that one's not posted up here too, that means I probably haven't done that video yet. Check back soon.